Everyone thanked the pilot as they filed off the plane, shaking his hand, smiling with relief after a terrifying emergency landing. But the quiet teenager in row 24, the one who had stayed calm while everyone else panicked, never said a word, never made eye contact, and disappeared into the crowd before anyone could ask why. Before we dive in, what time are you listening? Where are you from? Drop a comment below and tell me. And please like and subscribe for more videos like this. Flight 742 was supposed to be routine. 3 hours from Seattle to Denver, smooth skies, nothing unusual. Captain Mark Harrison had flown this route hundreds of times. He knew every mountain peak below, every air pocket, every moment when turbulence might shake the cabin, just enough to make nervous flyers grip their armrests. Today felt no different. The afternoon sun painted the clouds gold as passengers settled in, some reading, others watching movies on tiny screens, a few already asleep before takeoff. In row 24, near the back of the plane, sat a 16-year-old boy named David Chen. He wore a gray hoodie, headphones around his neck, and carried a worn backpack that had seen better days. He was traveling alone, heading to Denver to visit his older sister, who had just started college there. David was quiet by nature, the kind of student teachers sometimes forgot was in the classroom until they called roll. He preferred it that way. Attention made him uncomfortable. He slid into his window seat, pulled out a book about aviation history, and lost himself in stories of early pilots who flew with nothing but instinct and courage. The flight attendants moved through their safety demonstration. Most passengers ignored them, too familiar with the routine to care. But David watched closely. He always did. He had dreamed of being a pilot since he was 8 years old, since the day his father took him to an air show. And he watched jets slice through the sky like silver arrows. He knew the Boeing 737 like some kids knew video games. He had studied diagrams, read manuals he found online, watched documentaries about cockpit procedures. His bedroom walls were covered with pictures of planes. His notebooks filled with calculations about thrust and lift and drag. Halfway through the flight, something changed. David felt it before he heard it. A subtle vibration, different from normal turbulence. He looked up from his book. The engine sound had shifted, become uneven. Other passengers did not notice yet. They were scrolling through phones, chatting, eating pretzels. But David noticed. He pressed his face to the window and looked at the wing. The engine seemed fine from what he could see, but that vibration continued, growing stronger. Then came the announcement. Captain Harrison's voice, calm but with an edge David recognized as controlled concern. They were experiencing a minor technical issue. Nothing to worry about. Standard procedure. They would be making an unscheduled landing in Boise, about 40 minutes away. The cabin lights flickered. Someone gasped. A baby started crying 3 rows ahead. David felt his heart rate increase but kept his breathing steady. He had read about emergency procedures. Stay calm. Listen to instructions. Trust the crew. Around him, anxiety spread like wildfire. A woman across the aisle started praying loudly. A businessman demanded answers from a flight attendant who was trying to reassure everyone. People were pulling out phones, texting loved ones, some crying. The turbulence increased. The plane shuddered. Oxygen masks dropped from overhead compartments, dangling like yellow jellyfish. The flight attendants moved quickly, their training evident in every gesture. Put on your mask. Secure it tightly. Help others only after helping yourself. David pulled his mask down, adjusted it, and looked around. The woman next to him was frozen, staring at her mask like she did not understand what it was for. He reached over gently, guided her hands to it, helped her get it on. She did not thank him. She was too terrified to speak. Her hands shook violently. The plane dropped suddenly. Bags flew from overhead bins. Screams filled the cabin. David gripped his armrests but kept his eyes forward, kept his mind focused. He thought about everything he had learned. Emergency landings had high survival rates. Pilots trained for this. Captain Harrison was experienced. The plane was designed to handle system failures. These facts helped. They kept panic from taking over. Minutes crawled by like hours. The descent felt wrong, too steep, too fast. Through his window, David could see they were losing altitude quickly. Mountains rose below them, covered in dark green forests. He wondered if they would make it to Boise, or if Captain Harrison would have to find somewhere else to land. The engine sound was worse now, a grinding noise that made experienced flyers go pale. David saw a man in a business suit crying, saw a teenage girl gripping her mother's hand so hard her knuckles were white. Then, through the chaos, David heard something. A change in the engine pitch. He listened carefully. The grinding was on the left side, engine number 1. He had read about single-engine failures. The plane could fly on one engine, but landing was complicated, required perfect balance and control. He wondered if the pilots knew exactly which systems were compromised. He wondered if there was something, anything, he could do. The flight attendants were moving through final landing preparations. Seats upright, tray tables locked, brace position. David watched them work and felt a strange calm settle over him. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was acceptance. Or maybe it was something else, a clarity that came from understanding, from knowledge turning fear into focus. They broke through the clouds. Boise Airport appeared below. Emergency vehicles already lining the runway, red lights flashing like warning beacons. The plane was coming in at a sharp angle. Captain Harrison was fighting to keep it level. David could feel it in every movement, every correction. The wing dipped left, pulled back right. The landing gear deployed with a heavy thunk that echoed through the cabin. The runway rushed up to meet them. Too fast. David thought they were coming in too fast. He braced himself, hands on the seat in front of him, head down. The impact was hard, harder than any landing he had ever experienced. The plane bounced once, twice, then slammed down. Brakes screamed. The smell of burning rubber filled the air. They were skidding, sliding sideways, the whole aircraft shaking like it might tear apart. David felt his body pressed against the seat belt, felt the G-forces trying to throw him forward. Then, slowly, impossibly, they stopped. The plane sat silent on the runway, slightly tilted, surrounded by emergency vehicles spraying foam on the smoking engine. For a moment, nobody moved, nobody breathed. Then someone started clapping, others joined. Soon the entire cabin was applauding, crying, laughing with relief. They were alive. Against odds that had seemed impossible 30 minutes ago, they were alive. The evacuation was orderly. Flight attendants opened doors. Inflatable slides deployed. Passengers moved quickly, but without panic now, sliding down to the tarmac where paramedics and firefighters waited. Captain Harrison and his co-pilot were the last to leave the cockpit. They stood at the exit, shaking hands with every passenger as they left. "Thank you. Thank you so much. You saved our lives. God bless you." People were crying, hugging the pilots, taking photos. A news crew had already arrived, cameras rolling. David waited his turn. The line moved slowly. He watched Captain Harrison, saw the exhaustion in the man's eyes, the tremor in his hands that he was trying to hide. The captain was 50-something, gray hair, weathered face, the look of someone who had seen a lot of sky. When it was finally David's turn, he stopped. He looked at Captain Harrison. Their eyes met. David opened his mouth, but no words came out. What could he say? "Thank you" seemed inadequate. "You are a hero" sounded hollow. David had spent the entire flight thinking about aviation, about procedures, about what the pilots must be going through. He had felt connected to the crisis in a way others had not, understanding the technical nightmare happening in the cockpit. But standing there, face to face with the man who had saved them all, David felt something unexpected. He felt small. He felt like anything he said would be insufficient, would minimize what Captain Harrison had done. So David did nothing. He nodded once, a tiny gesture the captain might not have even seen, and walked past. He did not shake the pilot's hand. He did not smile. He just walked down the aisle, slid down the emergency slide, and disappeared into the crowd of passengers gathering on the tarmac. He pulled his hood up, put his headphones on even though no music was playing, and moved toward the terminal building. Behind him, he heard someone say, "Did that kid even thank the captain?" Another voice answered, "Some people have no gratitude." David heard it but did not turn around. Let them think what they wanted. He knew the truth. He knew what words could and could not express. Inside the terminal, chaos reigned. Airline representatives were trying to organize passengers, arrange hotel rooms, rebook flights. Families were reuniting with travelers, tearful embraces everywhere. News reporters were interviewing survivors. David avoided all of it. He found a quiet corner near a closed gate, sat down on the floor, and finally let himself shake. His hands trembled. His breath came fast. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving exhaustion in its place. He pulled out his phone and called his sister. She answered on the first ring, her voice frantic. She had seen the news. She thought he was dead. David told her he was fine, told her not to worry, promised he would get to Denver as soon as the airline sorted everything out. He did not tell her about the terror he had felt. He did not tell her about the woman he had helped with her oxygen mask, or the calculations he had run in his head about their descent rate. He just said he was fine and that he loved her. Hours passed. Most passengers stayed together, sharing their experience, bonding over shared trauma. They exchanged phone numbers, promised to stay in touch, talked about starting a survivors group. Local news interviewed Captain Harrison. He explained the hydraulic failure that had caused the crisis, praised his co-pilot and crew, said training and teamwork saved everyone. When asked about the landing, he said simply, "We did our job. That is what pilots do." One reporter asked about the passengers. Were they calm? Did anyone stand out? Captain Harrison paused, thinking. Most were understandably frightened, he said. But there was one young man, a teenager I think, who seemed remarkably composed. I noticed him through the cabin camera feed. While others panicked, he was helping the woman next to him, staying focused. I wanted to thank him personally, but I never got his name. He left without saying anything. The interview aired that evening. David watched it on his phone while sitting in a hotel room the airline had provided. He saw Captain Harrison describe him, saw the respect in the pilot's eyes when he talked about the calm teenager. David felt something break inside his chest. Not sadness exactly, something deeper. Recognition, maybe. Understanding. He had not thanked the captain because words felt like lies in that moment. How do you thank someone for your life? How do you express gratitude for something so immense it has no language? Every phrase David could think of sounded cheap, performative, like dialogue from a movie instead of real emotion. So he had chosen silence. He had chosen to let his respect exist without performance, without display. But watching the interview, David realized something else. His silence had not protected the purity of his gratitude. It had created misunderstanding. People thought he was ungrateful, rude, thoughtless. And Captain Harrison, the man David respected more than almost anyone, had noticed him, had wanted to connect, and David had denied him that moment. Not out of ingratitude, but out of something more complicated. Fear, maybe. Inadequacy. The sense that his words could never match what he felt, so better to say nothing at all. That night, David could not sleep. He lay in the hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about silence and speech, about gratitude and expression. He thought about all the times in his life he had stayed quiet when he should have spoken. All the moments he had let discomfort silence him. He was good at being invisible, at moving through the world without making waves. But maybe that was not strength. Maybe that was just fear wearing a different mask. The next morning, David did something he had never done before. He asked the airline representative if he could speak to Captain Harrison. She looked surprised but made a call. 20 minutes later, David stood in a small office in the airport, face to face with the pilot again. Captain Harrison looked tired, but smiled when he saw David. "You are the young man from row 24, he said. David nodded. He took a deep breath. "I am sorry I did not thank you yesterday," he said. His voice was quiet but steady. "It was not because I was not grateful. It was because I did not know how to say what I felt. Everything I thought of sounded wrong, too small for what you did. So I said nothing, but that was wrong too. You deserve better." Captain Harrison studied him for a moment. Then he did something unexpected. He laughed. not mockingly but with genuine warmth. "Son," he said, "I have been flying for 32 years. I have landed planes in storms, with failed systems, with fires in cargo holds. And you know what nobody tells you about being a pilot. It is lonely up there in that cockpit. You make decisions that affect hundreds of lives, and when it works out, people thank you, but they do not really understand. They cannot. Because they were not there seeing what you saw, making those calculations in split seconds, feeling that responsibility." He paused, looked directly at David. "But you," he continued, "you understood something. I saw it on the monitors. You knew what was happening. You stayed calm not because you were ignorant, but because you were informed. That is different. That is rare. So when you walked past me without saying anything, I did not think you were rude. I thought maybe you were processing, maybe you were dealing with it in your own way. And I was right." David felt tears forming, but blinked them back. "I want to be a pilot," he said. "I have wanted it my whole life. Yesterday, watching what you did, knowing what you were facing up there, it made me more certain. But it also scared me. What if I am not good enough when it matters? What if I freeze?" Captain Harrison smiled. "Fear is not your enemy," he said. "Overconfidence is. Fear keeps you sharp, keeps you prepared. The fact that you are asking these questions means you will probably be a good pilot someday." He reached into his bag and pulled out a small pair of wings, the kind pilots used to give to kids visiting the cockpit. "I want you to have these," he said. "When you finish your training, when you are sitting in that left seat for the first time, remember this day. Remember that being a pilot is not just about flying planes. It is about staying calm when everyone else is panicking. It is about making hard choices. And it is about understanding that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you are scared." David took the wings. His hand shook slightly. "Thank you," he said. This time the words felt right. This time they carried weight. "Thank you for saving us. Thank you for this. Thank you for understanding." They talked for a while longer. Captain Harrison told him about flight school, about the hard parts and the beautiful parts, about moments when you break through clouds and the whole world spreads below you like a dream. He gave David his email, told him to reach out if he ever had questions or needed advice. And when they finally shook hands and parted ways, David felt something shift inside himself. A door opening. A future becoming more real. 3 years later, David was sitting in his first solo flight training session, nervous sweat on his palms. Those small wings pinned inside his jacket pocket, where nobody could see them, but he could feel their weight against his chest. His instructor was going through pre-flight checks when David's phone buzzed. A news alert. Captain Mark Harrison was retiring after 35 years of service. The article mentioned the boy's emergency landing as one of the defining moments of his career. David smiled. He thought about that day, about fear and gratitude, about silence and speech. He thought about how close he had come to letting his discomfort steal an important moment, and how grateful he was that he had found the courage to go back, to speak, to connect. Some people spend their whole lives invisible because it feels safer than being seen. David had been one of those people. But that day in boys, something changed. He learned that silence is not always wisdom. Sometimes it is just fear. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is say thank you, even when the words feel inadequate, even when you are scared they are not enough. Because here is the truth. Gratitude does not have to be perfect. It does not have to be eloquent. It just has to be honest. And sometimes, when someone saves your life or changes your path, or shows you who you want to become, the least you can do is look them in the eye and let them know they mattered. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe for more videos like this.